Isaac Newton's first law of motion talks about how things that aren't moving tend to, not move. But things that are in motion already tend to stay in motion. Wait, is this study hall physics? Thankfully, nope. But go with me here. Staying in motion matters in rhetoric and composition too. Writing comes with its own kind of momentum, and keeping something in motion tends to be easier than getting started. But once you do the hard part, you get some momentum going and things keep moving from there on. Well, hopefully. On our own, the challenge of getting started or keeping up our pace while drafting can lead to the feeling of writer's block, or the idea that we cannot proceed with writing. But many of the best drafting techniques are all about helping us start our drafts with a strong plan and keep our pace brisk so that we can take advantage of momentum. Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and this is Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition. In another episode, we talked about how the drafting phase of the writing process isn't writing in general, but rather the specific step where we turn our invention and plans into drafts. And just like we've explored with the invention and planning phases, lots of people who think about writing a lot have come up with strategies to help us draft better. But wait, you might say, don't we just start writing and stop when we've said all we need to say? Well, there's an art and science to drafting well. Fortunately, there are lots of drafting techniques out there to help us, and we can always pick and choose or adapt strategies to work for us. So today, we're going to talk through 3 overarching techniques to help with drafting overall. Each one is focused on a different aspect of what makes drafting challenging for some folks. First up, maintaining momentum by drafting quickly. Once we start writing, some of us might naturally create drafts quickly, especially if we're also procrastinators. But others might find they often get stuck or can't decide what comes next, whether we have a looming deadline or all the time in the world. And which category we fall into can also vary depending on the writing project. But overall, being able to draft quickly is valuable because we'll often need 2 or more drafts due to an interesting feature of writing called emergent properties. Talking about the emergent properties of writing is basically a fancy way of saying that some ideas or elements of a project only show up once we've started writing. We can make a plan and start drafting, but maybe our research hits a dead end, or we come up with a way more interesting angle on the problem. Or we could even reread the prompt and realize we didn't incorporate something important in our project. So when something new emerges, instead of heading straight to the revision step after our first draft, we can build on that first draft with whatever new property has emerged in a second or even third draft. That's why drafts are called drafts. They aren't final products. Particularly if you're in school and have a lot of assignments to get through. By now you might be thinking, if I knew how to write faster, don't you think I'd be doing it? So let's get more specific. In order to draft quickly and have time to work through multiple drafts, a good technique to try is the quick but complete-ish draft, which can also be called fast drafting. This means that we write a full draft based on our plan but move as fast as possible by making notes when something slows us down and moving on to the next part of the project. The goal is to try every part of the project, hence the complete, but also to gloss over things that are slowing us down, hence the ish. By attempting the whole project, we can see what it's going to take to get it fully done and what emergent properties can pop up when we start putting ideas together. Like, take Anya, who's facing a ton of lab reports this semester for her chemistry class. Her first report took forever to write, and she still wasn't happy with what she turned in because she kept thinking of better structures and other points to mention right up until the due date. Feeling discouraged, she consulted with her TA before tackling the next one. They mentioned that writing a quick draft of all the sections, including the introduction, procedures, results, and discussion, would help her see where she was going to need the most focus. Another strategy that can help drafts maintain momentum is to return to past phases if drafting is slow. The 5 steps of the writing process are arranged in a way that's supposed to help us avoid wasting time and build momentum. But we can always return to past steps when we need to. If drafting is dragging on because you're not sure what point should go where, there's likely more planning to be done. And if the planning is also tough or you're stuck because you've run out of things to write about, maybe go back to the invention phase to create more ideas. Rather than sitting there telling ourselves that our drafting isn't working, we want to have a next step that we can always take. For instance, Anya takes so many notes during the experiment itself. both to start her invention process for the report and so that she has something to return to. If drafting is starting to slow down, she can go back to the notes and start jotting down ideas again and organizing them. Like a little mini return to invention and planning that gives her new material to work with in her draft. We can also keep drafts moving forward quickly by recognizing writing roadblocks, or the parts of projects that tend to trip us up. For instance, Anya's helpful lab partner heard her chatting with the TA about complete drafts and mentions that they always leave the introduction until the end because it's easier to reflect on the whole experiment first. Same thing if conclusions trip us up. We can always draft out of order. Work on the middle of the draft first and get all the nuts and bolts in order, and then pop back into the introduction or conclusion after we've worked through the important middle section. There are also smaller roadblocks that can slow us down, including things like style and grammar. Many of us will sit on a single sentence knowing that it feels incorrect or weird instead of accepting that it's a little bit off, but that we can return to it. But by telling ourselves that we can do something like underlining, starring, or highlighting a sentence, and then just continuing with our drafting, we keep up that momentum. We can still find the sentence when we get to the editing phase and work on it at that point. Like after reflecting on the advice of her TA and lab partner, Anya realizes that she also finds the introduction quite difficult to write first. So as she sits down for her first session of drafting on her second lab report, she skips it and goes straight to the procedure section, which is one of her favorite parts to write. Her results were already logged during the experiment, but she faces a choice. Spend some time now formatting a nice table, or use the momentum she has to move into her discussion section, where she evaluates what the results mean. She knows that formatting has slowed her down in the past, and the procedure section went better than she expected this time, so she moves into the discussion instead. So don't get me wrong. When I say that drafting quickly is a writing technique, no one expects us to type furiously without stopping, unless that's just your style. It's more about trying to make steady progress, rather than looking up and realizing you've spent an hour deciding yes or no on one comma. Now, the writing itself is only part of what can make drafting hard. And there are a lot of strategies that involve recognizing that our time rhythms are off. Like maybe it's 3 a.m., so we're blocked because we really need to sleep. Or we've sat in the same hunched over position for hours, so we're blocked because we need a walk, or a snack, or a drink of water. Some of our writer's block is actually distraction or writer's fatigue, and computers can sometimes make that worse. A valuable drafting technique is to manage the distractions in our environments, electronic or otherwise. If your project doesn't need internet research, managing distractions could mean working with the internet turned off. If you do need the internet, it might be worth blocking social media or other distracting sites, at least while you're drafting. But managing distractions can also include choosing to write somewhere loud or quiet, depending on what works for you. I personally need silence, a particular candle, some caffeine, and a blanket to cover all the bases. Another strategy to manage distractions is to draft in sprints. This means giving ourselves a burst of work time and then some kind of short break over and over until the drafting is finished. Our brains and wrists benefit from these breaks, and we'll be able to do more work overall without getting burnt out. At the end of a sprint, we can jot down a couple notes about the next section we'll be writing, and often that gives us some of the activation we need to start the next sprint after our break. Like for Anya, the discussion section is a challenge, but she's making good headway when her timer rings. Time for a break. She jots down her train of thought so that she can come back to it and takes a walk. When she comes back, not only is she able to finish the discussion, she now has some good ideas for what readers need to know in the introduction. Drafting this way has left her not only with time to write a new draft if she realizes that would make her report stronger, but also she has time to revise and edit her draft to be well polished and clear for her professor. There are also practical or more logisticsy strategies that can help us manage stress when drafting. First, it helps to draft with the plan you made earlier in the writing process physically nearby, either in a separate tab or on paper by your side while you type. No reason to try to vaguely remember what we were going to do and end up blocked just because we don't have our plan handy. The other strategy is just to save. Either draft in a word processor that makes it easy to autosave, or click save over and over as you write. I still tear up when I think about how I lost a chapter of my dissertation thanks to a computer glitch. Then, when we've made some progress, for extra security, we can copy paste what we've got into another place or back up our project somewhere else, just in case one program malfunctions. It's a waste of time to lose great drafts to crashes and glitches, not to mention devastating to our motivation. So save often and in multiple places. In Lab Reports 3 and beyond, Anya's success as a lab report writer is partially due to these environment management methods. She uses a computer in the library, so she isn't drawn into conversation with her roommate in her dorm, and drafts in a Google Doc that has an automatic save feature, which saves her more than once when she accidentally closes that tab. So altogether, we've discussed complete-ish but quick drafts, returning to past writing process steps so we don't get stuck, and managing our drafting environments for success. Some of us probably already do something similar, but next time you have a writing project to tackle, give one or two of them a try. They might make drafting easier, less stressful, or more effective. Overall, drafting techniques focus on not letting things get in the way of us progressing through the work we've carefully planned. Our mission in drafting is to clear the path for our brains to work, giving the mind time, rest, tools, and a plan that will help us write without hitting roadblocks. The roadblocks do exist for many of us, but we can work around them better and better as we get to know ourselves and our writing needs. As a plus, faster, less block drafting often saves time and stress along the way, both of which can make writing feel less like a chore and sometimes really enjoyable. Thanks for watching Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition, which is a part of the Study Hall Project, a partnership between ASU and Crash Course. If you liked this video and want to keep learning with us, be sure to subscribe. You can learn more about Study Hall and the videos produced by Crash Course and ASU in the links in the description. See you next time.